We have the special opportunity to study the thought of Rav Kook, Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Kook. And this morning we're going to look at one of the topics of Rav Kook, which I think is one of his most beloved ideas, one of the most important ideas in his life and his teachings, in his writings. And that is the love that we are to have for our fellow Jew and the love that we are to have for all mankind, for all humanity, but in particular the love of Jew to their fellow Jew. Ben Adam lechavero ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. And I'd like to begin our discussion with a comment that's made by a Rabbi, by one of the teachers of Rav Kook. We often ask the question, who are the great influences on the life of Rav Kook? One of them was the Netziv of Volozhin, Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. And we just started the new cycle of the reading of the Torah with Breshit. We're going to be reading Noach this week, Be'ezrat Hashem. And there is a famous comment, a well-known comment of the Netziv in his work Hameg Davar, in which he opens, before he begins the commentary on the book of Breshit itself, he begins with an introduction. And he raises the following question. He says that we know that there are a number of terms or titles that are used for the book of Breshit. One of them is Sefer HaYashar. That's one of the names for the book of Breshit. And the Hameg Davar, the Netziv, asked the question, well, why is it called the Sefer HaYashar? Why is that one of the names that's used for the book of Breshit? And the answer that he gives is that the personalities that are found in the book of Breshit, and he highlights Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that these were people who were Yesharim. These were people that lived their life in a Yashar way. And he says that the Yashar is actually considered to be greater than the Tzaddik, greater than the Chassid, even though I think we often think about the Tzaddik or the Chassid as the most elevated title. But the Netziv says that the most elevated title that one can receive is to be a Yashar, is to be a person who's a Yashar. And what does it mean to be a Yashar? So he explains that the Yashar is a person who cares about all people, who has a sensitivity to all people. And I'll just highlight, let's take a moment just to read a few lines, 3 or 4 lines from the Netziv of Volozhin. This is the opening, the Peticha, his opening to the book of Breshit. And if you go to the middle, right in the middle of the paragraph, in the page 1, in source number 1, and he speaks about the generation of the second temple, of the second Beit HaMikdash, where we all know that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam. And he writes the following, Perashim shayut tzadikim v'chasidim v'amalei Torah. In that generation, the people were righteous people. They were engaged in the study of Torah. Again, we're right in the middle of the paragraph, the first paragraph, the beginning, the first word in the line is Perashnu. Ach lo hayu yisharim. But those individuals in that generation were not what he calls yisharim b'halichot olamam, the way that they treated one another, what we might call today a menschlichkeit, that they didn't have, yes, they were engaged in learning, they were yirei shamayim, but they were lacking something in terms of their interpersonal relationships. Al-kaim b'pnei sinat chinam shebilibam, because of that hatred, zeh chashdu et mi shira'u shenoheg shelo kedatam, that they questioned other people around them, that they were judging other people around them. Shehut siduki v'apikores, they were quick to say that this one's an apikores, that this one's off the derech, that this one's not living their Judaism, observing Judaism properly. Uba al yedei zeh lidei shvichut damim, and that led to terrible things. B'derech haflaga ulechol haraot sheba'olam ad shecharav habayim. That was the reason for destruction of the temple. Ve'alzeh hayat tziduk adin, and that Hashem judged that generation, and it angered Hashem that they acted in that way. Shehakadosh baruch hu yasharhu, Hashem is yashar. Ve'eno sovel tzadikim, and He doesn't have patience for these kind of tzadikim ke'elu, ela ba'ofen sheholchim b'derech hayashar. That He wants tzadikim. He wants Jews to be not only tzaddikim, chasidim, but to be yesharim, to be yashar. And he says that is why this book is called the Sefer HaYashar. That's his introduction, a famous comment that's made by the Netziv. And if you look at the life of Avram Avinu, so we see he sits at the entrance of his tent, he invites people in, He doesn't know who they are. The commentaries say that they were Aravim, that they were Arabs that were walking on the way. He brings them in. He doesn't judge them. He wants the best for them as well. Sodom. Hashem says, I'm going to destroy the city of Sodom, that they're filled with Rishaim. What does Avram say? He could easily sit back and say, okay, they're Rishaim. God, you want to destroy the city? That must be the correct judgment. And yet he argues with God. Is it not possible that there aren't some tzaddikim? Is it not possible that there should be rachamim here for the city, for these people, for this community? So this says the Nitziv so beautifully that this is what the Sefer is all about. It's the foundational lesson as to what it means to be a Jew. To be a Jew. To be a Jew is to be, not only to try to be a tzaddik and to be a chassid, but to be a yashar. So it's called Sefer HaYashar. Now we have a very interesting story. Rav Kook comes to the Volozhin Yeshiva. He's 18 years old, and he develops a very close relationship with the Nitziv, with the famous Nitziv that we just quoted. And when he comes to the yeshiva, so he does something that other yeshiva students are not doing in the yeshiva, and that is right after davening, and we're all familiar with this, everybody, you put away, you have your tefillin, you're wearing your tefillin, you put it away afterwards, and now you sit down and learn. But Rav Kook continued to wear his tefillin, and he wore his tefillin throughout the day. As he was learning, throughout the morning and the afternoon, he sat with his tefillin on his arm and on his head. There were a group of students that went to the office of the Nitziv. They knocked on the door of the Nitziv's office, and they said, there's a student here that's wearing tefillin all day, and they said to the Nitziv, I don't think that's really appropriate. Who is he? Is he so holy that he's wearing tefillin all the time as he's learning? So the Nitziv says, in our yeshiva we have a lot of tzaddikim, we have a lot of gaonim, right? People that are very learned, people that are very righteous, but there's only one student here who is a yashar. That's what he said. There's one student, and that is Rav Kook. Now he was 18 years old at the time, he's a young man, but he already saw something unique in Rav Kook, the love that he had, the sincerity that he had. And I'll just read to you, the story is a well-known story, but it's actually it's told by Rav Aaron Soloveitchik and Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. There's a collection of his teachings in a sefer called Yeled Shashuim. This is the second source on the sheet. I'll just read to, and he talks about, he tells the story, and he sources this in a pasuk, but the very last paragraph, he says, this is what the Nitziv meant. The others, he was talking about the other students in the yeshiva, they're Gaonim, they're Tzadikim, but Rav Avram Itzala, that's the way that he referred to Rav Avram Yitzchak Kohen Kook. But Avram Itzala, again, he's a young man. He's a Gaon, he's a Tzadik, and he is a Yashar. In respect to a Tzadik and a Yashar, there's no Shaila, there's no question of Yuhara. Yuhara means arrogance when he puts his tefillin on Kol Hayom, when he's wearing his tefillin all day long. Right, the problem is that not arrogant to be wearing your tefillin when others are not wearing tefillin? He says when it comes to a yashar, somebody of that stature, somebody of that sensitivity, so he can wear his tefillin, and we're not concerned that that's it's arrogant to wear the tefillin. So in terms of the love and the sensitivity that we are to have for one another, I just want to source this to see that this is something that Rav Kook hears from his Rabbi, from the Nitziv. I find it astounding, by the way, if you were to write an introduction to the book of Breshit, what would you talk about if you want to kind of summarize the book of Breshit? I don't know, I would talk about creation or belief in God, maybe the promise of the land of Israel. But here the Nitziv, what he wants to write about in a short paragraph introducing the book of Breshit is about the personalities of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and what it means to be a yashar, what it means to be a mensch, what it means to be sensitive to others, a heightened sense of care and concern and love for others. This is what he heard from his Rebbe, and this becomes a very, very big part of the life of Rav Kook and the teachings of Rav Kook. So what I'd like to share with you right now, you could look at page 2, is, I would say, maybe three ideas where practically, how do we do it? I mean, we hear it all the time, that we should be more loving of others. This is something that's, very much in the news today and what we've gone through over the past year, right? With all of the challenges in Israel and politically, how do we come together? how do we love each other? How do we care for others in a more sensitive way, in a more caring way? So I want to share with you, I think we have here 3, maybe 4 ideas from Rav Kook. Practically, how do we do that? So this is page 2. This is, there's a 2 at the top of the page. I think it's the back, it should be at the back of page 1. So if you go to the back of page 1. So the first thing that Rav Kook argues is that we need to understand, we need to recognize that we are all different than one another. Let me read to you the following. Omer Harav, and this is the top of page 2. Kol Adam yesh lo hamaslul shelo. Every person has their own path. Every person has their own track. She'al yado hu ba le'oshro. That a person comes to a happiness, to finding fulfillment in life, litachlit havayato, that the purpose of his or her existence, shebo hu mitdabek le'yotzro. That's the way that person, that individual, clings to his or her creator. V'lo yachol lavo lemagamat chavtso b'maslol acher. And that person needs to find their path. Everybody has their pathway to their relationship with God and to their fulfillment in life. Afa pishu maslul yashar ba'ad acherim. Even though that may appear as a different path than others. So this is point number 1, which I think is a very important point that Rav Kook makes. It's on the one hand, it's somewhat obvious, but it's not something that we always take into account. And that is that we are different. Each person is different than the next person. We all have to find our own path. My path may be this way, doing certain things in terms of my religious life. Others will find their path and their way to spirituality and to their mission in life in a different way. You think about all the different, occupations that people have. There are people that can spend a life being an accountant, right? I can't imagine doing that, waking up every day and doing that kind of work. Somebody who is a dentist, they spend 8 hours a day with their hands in somebody else's mouth, and somehow they find that, to be meaningful. And yes, they find great meaning and purpose in that. I find it difficult just walking into a dentist's office. So everybody is different. We know that we're different than one another, that we have different interests, that we have different backgrounds, that there are different things that motivate us, different things that bring us meaning in life. And that's true spiritually as well. So Rav Kook says the first thing that we need to do is to recognize that, because we're so quick to judge others. Why are you not doing the following? Why is your religious or spiritual life not the same as my life? Well, we're very different than one another. We're not the same. And Rav Kook writes, just to follow up on this point, this is source number 2, Kasher Adam Yakir B'kach, when a person recognizes this, hu lo yagia liyo midameh be'atzmo, he is not going to envision himself or herself, shetov yafeh hayah le'olam, that it would be best for the world, shiyu kol b'nei adam domim elav betchunotav v'rikshotav. You recognize right away that you would never say everybody should be exactly like me, right? We generally don't think that way. So religiously, why are we judging others and saying, well, why is that person not like me in terms of my religious path in life? When you think in this negative way that everyone needs to be exactly like you, so then you have very little patience for others, v'tzarot ayin, and then you look at others with a negative eye, v'sinat habriyot, and then you can have even a kind of hatred for others. So point number 1 is that we are different from one another. Everybody is different. Everybody has their own path in life, and that's true spiritually as well. And if we recognize that, if we take a step back and we recognize that, right away that changes the way in which we judge one another. And here, Rav Kook quotes the following Gemara, a very beautiful Gemara. There's a Gemara in Brachos Daf Yud Zayin that says the following: Meragla, this is source 3, Meragla b'pumayhu d'Rabbanan d'Yavne. That this was something that the rabbis of Yavne would say on a regular basis. And look at the following statement. They would say, Ani bria v'chaverai bria. I am a creation of God, and my friend is a creation of God. Ani malachti be'ir. My work is in the city. V'hu malachta b'sadeh. He works in the field. Ani mashkim lemelachti. He wakes up to do his. I wake up to do my work. V'hu mashkim lemelachto, and he wakes up to do his work. Kishem shehu eno mitgader b'melachti. He doesn't think that his work is my work. Kachani eno mitgader b'melachto. That I don't presume that my work is should be the work that he does. V'shema tamar ani marbe v'hu mamit. And maybe one would say that I'm accomplishing a lot and that person accomplishes a little. Shaninu, we learn the following: Echad hamarbe ve'echad hamamit ubilvad sheyechaven libo l'shamayim. This is a very famous and a beautiful statement in the Gemara. Whether one does a lot or one does a little, the question is, it comes down to what is the intent of the person, the sincerity of the person. And look at what Rav Kook writes as a comment to this. Rav Kook writes, כיוון שאחד המרבה ואחד הממית, בלבד שיכוון אדם דעתו לשמיים, עיקר תלוי בחילוק השלמות של כוונת הלב. There's one thing that we don't know about one another, and that is really the intent of the heart of every individual. וזה נעלם מכל אדם. That's something that we can't possibly judge. Maybe we can kind of look at the outside, but we don't know the inside. We don't know what's going on in one's heart, in one's mind, the intentions of a person, the challenges of a person. Al kain ra'ui l'chol adam. Therefore, Rav Kook writes, it is appropriate for every person, afilu gadol b'chachma u'b'chavod, a person of great wisdom and a person of great honor, sheyachshov kol adam shehem b'nei malato v'shavim, that everyone is equal. Lo le'inyan l'chavdam u'la'avam be'emet, to love them truthfully. There is something that we do not know about the other person, and it really, to some degree, this is the most important element of every individual, and that is the intent of the heart. Echad hamarbe ve'echad hamamit, whether a person is doing a lot, whether a person does a little, uvilvad sheyechaven libo l'shamayim. The person and every individual, what is their intent? What is their effort? Right? How is it that they are establishing a relationship with God? And that you can't know about another person. Everybody has their own challenges. Everybody comes from a different place. And it's not up to any person to judge others in terms of that. And Rav Kook says we need to judge others, not in a negative light, but in the most positive light. And that is that everybody is fulfilling their mission and trying the best to do that. So that is the second point that Rav Kook makes. That when it comes to judging others, we have to be very, very careful because, again, it could be that it appears that somebody is accomplishing a lot spiritually or religiously, and somebody may be doing a little, so to speak, but that little bit may be with great sacrifice, with great intent, with a great desire to fulfill their avodat Hashem. Okay. A third point that Rav Kook makes, and with this, again, this can help us. It advises. It's good. A good recommendation in terms of how not to judge others and how to be more favorable in terms of how we judge others. So he says what we need to do is to first recognize that we are lacking. In other words, we're quick to judge others, but are we perfect in our avodat Hashem in terms of our spiritual and our religious life? Look at the following line from Rav Kook. This is 5, source number 5. In the bold on the bottom, Biyoto Yodea, number 5, the bold, the last two lines. Biyoto Yodea tochen chesronotav. When a person recognizes that they are lacking, v'chesron koach hashlamato, and a person recognizes that they're lacking in their shlemut, yeh tarud behashlamat atzmo. So a person now can put all of their effort, not in looking at others and not judging others, but how can I improve? How can I be mitaken? How can I fix that which is lacking in my own spiritual life, in my own religious life, in my own relationship with God? V'lo yeh chafetz lahagdil et hashpato. And he'll be less interested in trying to affect others, to try to convince others. Maybe that's not our role. Maybe it's not so much about convincing others to change their lives or to take a certain path, but rather to think more about our own spiritual lives and how to fix that, how to correct that, and how to live religiously, spiritually to the utmost. And the last source in terms of advice that Rav Kook gives how to be more loving of others. So this is source number 6, the bottom of page 2, and this is from the Mamarei Haraya, from a collection of writings of Rav Kook. He writes, Tov ma'od la'adam. It is a very good thing for a person, sheyesh shakua, that a person should be engaged, engrossed, lachshov cheshbon atzmo. So this, that like we just saw a moment ago, a person should be making a personal cheshbon. Let's do less of making a cheshbon about others around us. Let's look at ourselves. Ulechateit b'mumav hanafshiim. Let's look carefully at our own faults, at our own blemishes. Ulehabit be'ayin yafeh al achirim. And to look with a good eye upon others. Shiyuchal be'emet. Liyot sheyesh b'matzbonam gam otzar tov hasamoy min ha'ayin. And here Rav Kook says something which is a very, very important point for Rav Kook, and that is, maybe there is something there that we do not see. And Rav Kook, being a mystic, being a Kabbalist, this is one of the foundational principles of what it means, the idea of Kabbalah. The idea of Kabbalah means that there's an inner world, that there's a world that we don't necessarily see. We don't judge just based on the facade, based on what the naked eye sees. There's something deeper. And within every person, it could be, yes, you judge others, you see that they're acting that way, but is that really the essence of the person? And this is a great Hasidic idea. This is an idea that we find in the writings of Rav Kook as well, and that is to look beyond the facade, beyond what one sees on the outside. Look on the inside, the neshama that a person has, the potential that a person has. Okay, let's go now to page 3. And Rav Kook analyzes another Gemara that's found in Brachot, the Gemara Brachos Daf Tet Zayin Amud Beis, which is a prayer. Now it's interesting in the Gemara has a number of personal prayers that the rabbis would say as they ended the Amida, that they would include their own personal tefillah, which is similar to what we have today, the Elokai Netzur, the paragraph that we say after the Amida. And this is one of the prayers that was said, one of the personal tefillot that was said after the Amida. And Rav Kook is going to make a very beautiful comment on this. And we'll just look at the first 3 lines. Rabbi Elazar, Batar Desayim Tzaluse, when he would come to the end of his prayer, referring to the end of the Amida, Amar Hachi, this is what he would add. And again, the Gemara has a long list of these prayers that rabbis would say, that the sages would say after they finish the Amida. Yihi ratzon milfanecha, Hashem Elokeinu, may be your will, my God, our God, shetishkon b'purenu ahava ve'achava ve'shalom ve'reut. So what would they pray? May be your will, Lord our God, to cause to dwell in our lot love and brotherhood, peace and friendship. That was his tefillah. This is the top of page 3. That was his tefillah at the end of the davening every day. Let there be in our lot, bipurenu, like the word Purim, which means lot, which is kind of like an interesting term to use. Rav Kook is going to comment on that in a moment. Let there dwell in our lot love, brotherhood, peace, and friendship. Okay, so what does that mean? So first of all, we see straight up that was his tefillah every day. That let our community, let my interactions be one of love and friendship and caring for one another. That's what Rabbi Elazar would say at the end of his tefillah every day. A beautiful tefillah. So Rav Kook writes the following. Just reading a few lines in Rav Kook. This is from his Einaya, a comment that he makes on this Gemara. Hagoral taloi lefi hanireh al pi mikrim achitzonim. So he says that the Goral, what happens to us every day, so there's sort of like a happenstance, right? Who are we going to meet today? Who are we going to interact with today? Right? The person behind the counter, the person that we're going to sit next to on the bus. Like, there's a lot of things that's going to happen throughout the day that sort of is by chance, happenstance. V'hainu shetashmirenu mimikarim hamafriim banu et rigshei ahava ve'achva l'chol habriot. So what is the prayer? He was praying that my interactions throughout the day, the happenstance, the people that I'm going to come in contact with throughout the day, let them be people that I'm going to have a love for. And I don't want to come across people that are going to are going to affect my love and my chesed in a negative way. Look at what he writes, V'tazmin lanu mikrim. And you're asking Hashem, can you coordinate the day in such a way, shiyu mo'ilim lahagdil et erech ahava ve'achva ve'shalom ve're'ut. Let me meet the people, let me come across people, let me interact with people that I'm going to increase love for my fellow person. Ki ha'adam keshemotzei bibriot, mishe ba'im alav b'nechalim u'mamitim alav ra'ot. If you meet people that are going to make life difficult for you, nefach levavo l'sinat habriot. So if you're going to come across people like that, it's going to be difficult for you to be loving. So you're asking Hashem, let me interact with people, set up my day in such a way there should be a hashkacha, a certain providence, that I'm going to meet people that I'm going to love. V'hu chared biyoter shelo ya'aved matnat lev nediva. And I don't want to lose any of the love that I have in my heart for my fellow man. That's the way that Rav Kook interprets this. So this is a prayer that he would say every day, that the Rabbi Lazar would say every day. Fill my day with interactions with the kind of people that I'm going to easily love them. I don't want to interact with people that I might lose any of that sense of achva, of ahava for one another. You know, I was thinking about Rav Kook as a personality who epitomized this idea of loving others, of praying that I should meet people, that I should be in the presence of others that I easily love, that I want to express my love to all of humanity. And I was thinking about another personality in our generation who was a person of great love, and that was the Rebbe of Lubavitch Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Schneerson of Lubavitch. In the very first, this is the very first letter that he wrote when he became the Rebbe of Lubavitch. This goes back to 1950. August 31st, 1950. Here's an excerpt from that letter as he took the position, and this is really the first statement that he makes to his Hasidim, and he writes the following: regarding material charity, the law is that the material pauper is also obligated to give. He says that even a poor person has to give tzedakah. A person with very little money is also obligated to give tzedakah, for even the most impoverished person can find a way to help his fellow pauper. The same applies to spiritual charity. So listen to this. This is the first lesson that Lubavitcher Rebbe is teaching, that when it comes to spirituality, we also, in terms of religiously, we also need to be sharing. There is no man or woman in Israel who cannot, in some way, influence his or her fellow Jews and bring them closer to heaven, the Torah and the mitzvot. That all of us, this was his call to his Hasidim, and we see that it's a call that had a great impact, a great influence on Chabad, and that is that everybody has the responsibility and everybody has the potential to share with others, to share Torah with others, to inspire others, to bring others closer to Judaism. And here, look at number 5. On this note, the Rebbe would often quote the lovely Hasidic teaching: if only you know Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, then teach an Aleph. If that's all you know, if you know an Aleph, if you know a Beis, and there's somebody that doesn't know that, so share that with that other person. Bring that other person closer. I was listening recently to a shir by Rabbi Breitowitz. I'm sure many of you know Rabbi Breitowitz. He teaches here. He's really one of the outstanding rabbis of Yerushalayim today. He was a rabbi in Silver Spring, Maryland for a period of time. He made Aliyah. He's been here for many years. He's in Or Sameach as one of the Rosh Yeshiva. And on this, the shir that he gave, he said that he goes to YouTube and he likes watching the following. And I was like kind of waiting to hear, what is it that he likes watching on YouTube? So he says, I like watching, they have all these hours and hours of footage of the Rebbe giving out dollars to people. And we know for many years, the Rebbe on Sunday, he would stand for 6-7 hours without a break, and he would just be handing dollars to people as they were coming and to receive a dollar from the Rebbe, and sharing a word of chizuk. Very often a person would ask for a bracha, or would ask quickly for some advice from the Rebbe. And imagine that with everything that he had on his schedule and everything that he was involved in on Sundays just to hand $1 to somebody else. By the way, he explained, why do I do that? Why do I hand $1? What's that dollar for? He says when two Jews get together, they should think about how they are going to help another Jew. Whenever two Jews get together, they should be thinking about how can I help somebody else. That's how he explained the giving of the $1. And the idea is that that person would take the $1 and they would give that $1 to tzedakah. Two Jews coming together, how can we help somebody else? Now, a lot of people did not give that $1. I think they took another $1, and they would give tzedakah. People held on to that. If you go on eBay today, they go for thousands of dollars, just one of those dollars that was given from the Rabbi. But you see, which I find so beautiful and so moving, that the Rebbe felt, the Lubavitcher Rebbe felt that that's such an important part of his week, right? Just to spend a Sunday afternoon, again, not just an hour or two, spend hours and hours just to be in touch face to face with anyone. And by the way, if you watch those videos, you can go to YouTube. There are women, there are men, there are children, there are policemen, firemen, people, politicians, people that are coming, and he's interacting with everyone, giving a good word, a smile, giving advice. And this is what Rav Kook is speaking about as well. And we see another great, a giant of our generation, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in terms of the love that he had for others. And that was part of his weekly routine, that was known as the Sunday dollars, giving out the Sunday dollars. Okay, we can turn now to the fourth page. And I want to share with you the following. This is, on the one hand, this is, it's a very beautiful idea, the idea of loving others, of seeing the best in others, of being caring for others. We started with the Nitziv, with Rav Kook, some of the advice that Rav Kook gives in terms of how to be more loving of others, how to be more compassionate, how to be more understanding, and Lubavitcher Rebbe. But I want to share with you that this is found in the halacha as well. It's not only a poetic or a beautiful idea or a sermonic idea, but it's something that's rooted in the halacha, it's something that's found in the halacha. So the Rambam writes the following. Now this is in a section called Kedusha in the Mishnah Torah, in Hilchot Isurei Bia. And these are the laws that relate to marriage and who a Jew is allowed to marry, who a Jew is not allowed to marry, what's called a mamzer, which we're familiar with, a chalal, all different complexities in terms of the law. And here he brings the following law. This is Hilchos Isurei Bia, Perek Yutet, Halacha Yud Zayin. Let's say somebody comes to shul, shows up in shul, and says, we are a Jewish family, and we'd like to join the congregation. Do we assume that that is accurate? Can you just assume that somebody who says that they're a Jew or a Jewish family, that they are Jewish? It's a good question. I don't know if you ever thought of that. Somebody that you meet, I'm a Jew. You date somebody, I'm Jewish. Can you take their word for it? So this is what the Rambam writes, Yud Zayin. Kol mishpachot, every family, this is halacha Yud Zayin, bechezkat kashrut. A Jewish family, a Jewish individual who says that they're Jewish, that they have a chazaka, that they are Jewish. We can assume that they are. Umutter lisamehen lechachila. You can marry into those families. You don't have to check into the lineage. Which, by the way, is a whole discussion today. If we still follow this chazaka, where things have become much more complicated, especially on the American scene, in terms of who's Jewish and who's not Jewish. But this is the halacha. Somebody shows up in shul, you meet a family, they say they're Jewish. We have a wonderful daughter that we'd like to set up with your son. Right? Can you assume that everyone's Jewish here? So the answer, the Rambam says yes. Okay, somebody just shook their head no. But the Rambam says yes. Kol mishpachot, a family who says that they're Jewish, bechezkat kashrut, mutter lisamehan lechachila. You can marry into those families 100% lechachila, no questions asked. But he writes the following, V'af al pi chen. But even though this is the case, im ra'ita shtei mishpachot, but if you see families, two families, shemit garot zo bazo, if there's tension, if there's fighting between families, tamid, on a regular basis, o ra'ita mishpacha, or you see a particular family, shehi ba'alat matzah o miriva tamid. They're a family that there's a lot of, what's matzah? Matzah, there's a lot of tension there. There's miriva. There's a lot of fighting in that family on a regular basis. O ra'ita ish, or a particular individual, shu marbem miriva. A person is always involved in again, there's fighting, there's tension, imakol, with others, ve'oz panim, and he's a person of a certain arrogance, biyoter. Look at what he writes, chosheshin lahen. With those attributes, those characteristics, we have to be concerned. V'ra'ui lehitrachek me'en. Better to keep a distance from such families, not because those aren't the best families to marry into, but he writes, she'elu simanei paslutem. It could be that you have Gentiles in that family. That's not the Jewish way. A Jew does not act that way. A Jew is rachamim. A Jew is compassionate. What's fascinating to me that this is a halacha. In other words, not just a musar idea, but it's in the Shulchan Aruch as well. That if you see a certain personality within a family, so that, according to the Rambam, you can question if the lineage is 100% a Jewish lineage. And the Rambam writes, go 2 lines from the bottom of this halacha, shesimanei Yisrael, because we know that the simanim of Yisrael, what does it mean to be a Jew? What's a sign of a Jew? Simanei Yisrael ha'ummah ha'kadosha, the holy nation of Israel. There's a famous line that's found in the Gemara, and the Rambam has it, we're baishanim, rachmanim, v'gomlei chasadim. You want to know who a Jew is? A Jew is one who is a baishan, a person who is humble, a person who is rachman, a person who's merciful, and a person who's gomlei chasadim, a person who is kind. So we talk about the kindness of a person, sensitivity and compassion of a Jew to another Jew, a Jew to another human being. Well, that the Rambam says, that's the very essence of what it means to be Jewish. Right? That's the very definition of a Jew, is to be a bayan, a rachman, to be gomlei chasadim. There's a beautiful sefer called Chadarav. Chadarav is a collection of writings of Rav Kook that he didn't necessarily mean to have published. They weren't meant for publication. These were sort of private notes that Rav Kook made, private ideas that he jotted down, that he wrote down. Chadarav, the inner chamber of Rav Kook. So these are from the notebooks and the writings of Rav Kook. It was collected in this sefer, and I want to share with you the following line from Rav Kook. This is we're on the last page 4. We're going to skip that top paragraph in Hebrew to go to the second paragraph in the Hebrew. And Rav Kook writes the following. He writes, Ohev ani et habriot. He says, I love creation, all of God's creations. Right? I love all of humanity. Ohev ani et habriot. B'shum ofen lo ashanem midati b'fenim miyuti. I'm not going to change my inner character. That is who I am. That is who I am. I love people. I love humanity. Al hakol ani motzei zechut v'tzad tov. I find merit, I find a zchus, and v'tzad tova, and I find goodness in everyone, some aspect of goodness. You know, it's interesting to me because I think what Rav Kook is saying here, with all of the sort of the obligations or all the different, perspectives on why we are to love others and how to be less judgmental, to be more loving, Rav Kook says when it comes down to it, and he's really describing himself, and hopefully there's some truth in all of us, for all of us, and that is that it's something that's just natural. It's who I am. It's what it means to be a Jew. It's what it means to be a human, right? To love others, to express love and compassion to others, whether I'm obligated in it or not. Interesting, there's a Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, who is the founder of the Musar movement. So there's a famous question that's asked, well, why is it when we give tzedakah, we don't make a bracha when we give tzedakah? In other words, the mitzvah in the Torah, right before I put my money in the pushka or I hand somebody tzedakah. Why don't I first, Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvozav etzivanu, al mitzvat tzedakah, and then, like we do for so many other mitzvot. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, were you to do that, you would be making an object out of that person. It's supposed to be something that flows naturally. It's not that you stop for a moment and say, I'm obligated now to give the following tzedakah, that I have to reach into my wallet, and here's my obligation. I'm fulfilling my obligation to give this shekel, to give 10 shekel to tzedakah. Once you do that, you've kind of like lost, you've like lost the beauty, you've lost the very essence, right? It's something that's supposed to flow from your heart. It's something that you're supposed to feel a compassion. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says, no bracha when it comes to tzedakah, right? You shouldn't stop, and you shouldn't feel that it's out of obligation. It's something that you should feel that naturally, as a Jew, as a person, as somebody who cares, somebody who's compassionate, that I give to others. And I think that's what Rav Kook is expressing here as well. Ohev ani et habriot. I am a lover of people. Where you walk down the street in Yerushalayim and just look at everyone and say, I just love everyone. Right? I love everyone here in Israel. I love everyone in Yerushalayim. B'shum ofen lo hashanem midati. I'm not going to change that. I love that about me, and it's something that I never want to change about my personality, says Rav Kook. Al hakol ani motzei zchut. I'm going to find something good in everyone. V'tzad tova. I'm going to find goodness in everyone. Al hakol mamash. In absolute, without exception. And he writes, V'or Hashem al kol yofia. The light of God is going to appear on every person. V'rachamav al kol masav. And he quotes the pasuk that we're all familiar with from Ashrei, that the mercy of Hashem is on all of his creations. If Hashem's mercy is on all of his creations, then our mercy should be on all of his creations as well. I'd like to conclude with the following, and that is something that's in the news, and something that unfortunately we've experienced here locally here in Yerushalayim. There were unfortunately, tragically, many losses over the last number of days. Many men who were serving on miluim. Older people with families that were killed over the last number of days. One of them is a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Avi Goldberg. Rabbi Avi Goldberg, and I'm sure some of you have heard his name. I never met him. I do not know him personally, but he was killed this past Shabbat in Lebanon. He was working as a chaplain, as a rabbi, as a Rav Tzva'i in the army. And he's sitting Shiva here in Yerushalayim. The family is sitting Shiva here in Yerushalayim, right off of Makor Chaim Street. This is an article that I read the other day. I'm going to share with you just a couple of paragraphs from this article. It's written by Rachel Sharansky Danziger. I'm not sure if that's a name that you're familiar with. This is the daughter of Natan Sharansky, the famous Natan Sharansky, who was one of the heroic figures and in Russia, and he becomes a member of Knesset here. One of the amazing people of our generation. This is his daughter, who teaches here in Yerushalayim. She teaches in Matan and a number of other institutions, and she writes about a little bit about Rabbi Avi Goldberg, who lived, I think, just a couple of blocks away from her. And I'll just share the following. It was late at night. I was walking home from one engagement or another, weighed down by the war, the losses abounding around us, the daily grind. I was reading the news on the phone as I walked, but something made me look up, and there was Rabbi Avi. Again, this incident happened a few weeks ago. My neighbor and one of the pillars of my community. This is referring to Rabbi Avi Goldberg, who was killed this past Shabbos. A man who led us in prayer, learning, music, and volunteer work countless times. Erev Tov, good evening, he said, and smiled before walking on. That was it, a 5-second long banal interaction, but it was enough. I felt rejuvenated. I put away my phone and my worries were suddenly eased. Being smiled at by Rav Avi was like basking in sunshine. How could I be so sad or worried or distressed when Rav Avi looked at me with that beautiful light in his eyes? If to exchange smiles with Rav Avi was to be uplifted, to converse with him was to feel your lungs fill with air, and your soul filled with renewed strength, because Rav Avi looked at the world with so much clarity, so much love for the Jewish people and humanity, and such a keen awareness of the deep truths and stories that underlie our lives in Israel, that his perspective couldn't help making your doubts and concerns ebb away. During the 250 days he served in Miluim, in reserve duty this past year, 250 days of this past year he was away from his family, from his wife, and he has 8 children. 250 days he served in Miluim this past year. My entire community sorely missed him and his ability to revive our spirits with a word, a smile, and a glance. In this dark year filled with tragedy and loss, we needed his clarity of vision and his confidence. And whenever he could, Rav Avi sent messages and voice notes to his family, to our community, to his students at the Himmelfarb High School. A high school, like so many schools in Israel, has seen the loss of too many alumni in this war, and to countless other groups and communities he was involved in. Somehow, his confidence and faith that this hard time would lead us to a better future was powerful enough to reach us through pixels and sound waves, providing support for all who received his messages, even in the darkest of times. Who will raise us up now when it is the loss of Avi himself that darkens our world like an irrevocable eclipse? So that is what she wrote, the opening of an article that appears in the Times of Israel. So I'm not sure if you saw this in the news, but first of all, he was a person in a family that they hosted many events at their homes where they tried to bring people together, people of different walks of life. Our theme this morning of the compassion and sensitivity and the love for all Jews. That's something that they did. He spent a number of years in Memphis. He went on a shlichut to be in a community and to teach about Israel and to share with children in Memphis. And he was a rabbi, he was a teacher. Later in life, he decided that he wanted to serve as a rabbi in the army as well, and that was the work that he was doing when he was killed this past Shabbos. So I'm not sure if you saw this on social media or in the news, but they announced the following, and they said, at the Shiva, we know that the politicians, government officials, that they come and they visit the Shiva. So, which is very appropriate, that you have leaders of the country that come and visit. But his wife said the following, that they're welcome to come, that the right and the left, no matter what party, everyone is welcome on one condition, and that is that you come in pairs. Somebody from the right and somebody from the left, that you have to come together and that you have to sit together at the Shiva. That was the one condition. Everyone can come, any politician, but you must find somebody from an opposing party to come with and to be with at the Shiva. And there was a picture that was posted just last night and this morning of the Shiva call of politicians, and there they are sitting next to one another, these pairs from different parties that were sitting together and that they were making this Shiva call. So he, by the way, was a teacher. He taught a lot of Rav Kook, of the teachings of Rav Kook at the Himmelfarb school where he was a Rebbe, where he was a rabbi. And this lesson is such an important lesson for all of us today. It's an important lesson for all of us on a personal level in terms of judging one another favorably, seeing the best in one another, being compassionate, praying every day, as Rabbi Lazar did in the Gemara, that my day should be filled with people, that I should come in contact with people that I love, and to enhance the love that I have for OUisrael. And what an important lesson it is for us now, and what a role model this family is, with the loss of such a dear rabbi and individual, to share with OUisrael this lesson, that there's nothing more important at this time than for us to be together, to be unified, to love one another. We should be zochet to do this on a personal level. We should be zochet to do it as a nation. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Yashar koach. Wish everyone a good week. Bisarot tavot.